I grew up here in Riviera Beach. I've been a resident of Riviera Beach for the last 55 years. I went to school here. I'm married with 2 adult kids. I've been married 24 years this month. And I served with the Riviera Beach Police Department for 22 years prior to my retirement 9 years ago. But I've been a law enforcement, certified in the state of Florida as a law enforcement officer for the last 31 years. I served as Chief of Police in the Tallahassee area, as well as Deputy Chief of Police in Jupiter Inlet Colony, just north of us here.
Doing that right now?
Yes, sir.
Sir, talk about your platform. As I read it, among other things, as you run against the longtime incumbent Sheriff Rick Bradshaw, you talk about the budget. You feel that there's been no oversight on the PBSO budget. Talk about your critique.
Absolutely. Well, the PBSO budget is about $590 million to include the sheriff office grant funding. It's about $1 billion. And the sheriff, unfortunately, whether it be unfortunate or fortunately, he has total autonomy over his budget. And so in my mind, there's no transparency to that because he's left to his own devices to use the taxpayer dollars how he sees fit. But I believe there needs to be transparency so that the taxpayers know exactly what their tax dollars are being utilized for.
Give me one example.
For an example, like the purchasing of the vehicles that they drive, the Nallies and the Platinum vehicles, that is a huge impact to the budget when you have the administrative staff driving $80,000 vehicles or $90,000 vehicles. I think that we can reduce that by going to Ford Explorers, which would be a lot cheaper, and it's a cost saving to taxpayers.
Let me ask you talk about preserving law and order, working within the community. Again, your platform, you say that Chief Alex Freeman believes the most effective approach is more of a holistic approach, a strategic incorporation, quoting your own platform, of these concepts to preserve the safety of Palm Beach County residents. He wants PBSO to embrace alternative methods to crime prevention, such as working in collaboration with social workers, mental health providers, and victim advocates. Is that, in your mind, a change from what we're doing now? Why do you think that's the way to put your focus?
Absolutely, because when I think about this recidivism and men and women find themselves a part of this revolving door of going back and forth to the county jail at a cost of $150 a day that taxpayer pays to house inmates in the county jail. So in my effort and my strategies to reduce crime here in Palm Beach County, my administration, we're going to work with apprenticeship programs and unions and educational programs that are willing to come into Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and train those men and women in a trade or to enhance a skill or a trade they already have. We're also going to work with employers that are willing to come into the Sheriff's Office, whether it be every 90 days or every 30 days, to hold job fairs in the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Because many of those men and women, when they transition back in our communities, they're going to be on probation.
What about the critics who argue that PBSO is not a social agency, and critics who I can hear saying that with ultimately limited resources for any sheriff, that sounds like you're going to take away from manpower on the streets, and it sounds like he's soft on crime?
No, not at all. Not being soft on crime, but it is a way to reduce crime in Palm Beach County. See, when you change the mindsets of those who are engaged in criminal behavior and you give them a skill set, provide them with a skill set, it is a cost savings to the community. And so that when they transition back in our communities, they're gainfully employed because many of them are going to be on probation. And if they don't have a job to go to meet that financial obligation of paying that probation, they're going to reoffend. So the goal is to change their mindsets, to reduce crime in Palm Beach County so that you and I and no one else will be a victim of their behavior.
You talk, as you run against Sheriff Bradshaw, about a few key reform measures that seem to be an implicit criticism or explicit about PBSO. Enhanced deputy training to address underlying ethnic and racial biases, your platform says. The establishment of a civilian complaint review board. Advocacy for an independent prosecutor. The demilitarization of the police force. Reinstitution of community-oriented policing, an early warning system to identify certain behavioral red flags among those on the force. Pretty explicit criticism in its own way.
Absolutely. And that come by way of some of the behavior that we've seen in law enforcement. We've come to a time now where many people just don't trust law enforcement today. And it's up to police chiefs and sheriffs and those in leadership in law enforcement to hold those small subgroup of individuals, law enforcement professionals, who find themselves operating outside of policy and procedure, state law, and so on and so forth. So when we recognize that type of behavior and that we have recalcitrant employees, we have to address that.
Let me ask you in our remaining time as you introduce yourself to our audience, why do this? Why run? At least the political experts will say being far outspent, long-time incumbent, why do it?
Well, you know,
David versus Goliath, many will argue anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is my third time running for sheriff in this county, and I know that I can't outmatch the money that Bradshaw is raising outside of the state of Florida and within the state of Florida from organizations. But I can do, and what I am doing is outworking him and my other opponents, because I do feel and believe out of the three of them that are running, all of them have done time at the sheriff's office. You know, Bradshaw has been in law enforcement 54 years, as well as Michael Gauger, who was his undersheriff, and the other gentleman that's running, he was his former captain. So that tells me when you have two former employees, especially your second in command running against you, there is some concerns at the sheriff's office. That, to me, that is a issue that something might not be right that is going on. But I feel that it is time for change. You know, like I said, he's been in law enforcement 54 years, 1 year less than I'm old. You know, so I think it's time for a change. I think it's time for some fresh new ideas in the sheriff's office. And it's time that the sheriff's office be transparent across the board in everything that we do, because it's important that the public trust that we're providing quality law enforcement services and we're not hiding anything.